All right, I've got Eric Dates with me. He's the VP of GTM at VComply, if I pronounce that name correctly. Did I get it right? VComply, is that how you pronounce it, Eric?
Yes, sir.
Killer, man. All right, well, sweet. Well, I'm glad we're doing this. You and I were talking a bunch over LinkedIn. You had some awesome comments. I've seen you all over the LinkedIn feed in various sorts and some of your posts even. So it's always nice to meet in the flesh and kind of go a little bit deeper. But before we get into all that, I always like to ask people when we first kick these off, how did you get into marketing? I think it's always interesting because everyone I feel like stumbles into it. They weren't necessarily there before, but was that the case for you or walk through that journey?
Sure. No, and thanks for having a chat with me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's funny. I started with big dreams and aspirations of running my own hotels way back
Oh.
when,
Hmm.
and long story short, worked at the Beverly Hilton out in LA for a little bit, and yeah, got like a cool internship kind of deal with the GM, kind of shadowing her. It was pretty cool, and quickly learned, hotels were not the passion for me, quite frankly, but it was good learning. And I took the the training that they had at the Beverly Hilton, same with Ritz Carlton training online, which was kind of blowing my mind a little bit on this whole customer service, right? Customer first mentality, which I think is now kind of taken over business in general.
Hmm.
And from there on, I was trying to figure out what should I do, and there was an opportunity to go work at a co-working space of all places, in kind of leading their marketing at the time efforts. This was back when HubSpot was just branding up your emails based on your company colors.
Yep. Remember
Um,
those days.
oh yeah, and yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it. It was fun. It was similar to the customer experience that we were building at hotels, so just kind of stuck with it and haven't turned back since.
That's killer, man. I love that. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny for me. I got my start in sales. And so I was doing the one thing I said I didn't want to do when I graduated college, but I was selling security software to the US government for a while and then kind of hopped around. And then, of course, once you enter startup land, then titles just become kind of meaningless to a degree. You
Totally.
just end up doing all sorts of things. And so that's where I got a whole bunch of exposure in a bunch of different areas. But I'm sure like the stuff that you did early on with hotels, you couldn't have gotten to where you're at without those types of experiences. And so it's always the same type of thing for everyone. Um,
Absolutely.
well, cool, man. Well, we want to get into one thing that you and I were chatting about on LinkedIn. And so to give some people some context, since they probably didn't see this post, or if you did, then cool. About a week or two ago, I posted something about product marketing templates and how to better educate buyers on what you do, how you do it, and like how did it actually work? Because there's so much marketing that is hitting people all across all channels, LinkedIn, Meta, you name it. And what's happening really is that people still are confused because they're not clear enough with what the product actually does. And so I think there always needs to be a layer of attention around just being very specific with what are the core things that I'm going to get out of this product. And so I shared four templates, four examples. I think one was question, capability, before and after, and then one other related to that. I think is capability problem, missing one other, but four different templates. And so the idea was just to kind of leverage some of those just to save some, brain processing time to get to some really great product marketing ads for any type of B2B SaaS brand. But you said something that was really interesting, and I wrote it down here. So you mentioned this is more of a clinic and converting attention versus attracting attention. And I thought we could kind of get into that a little bit because I think it's an interesting point and kind of hits on a whole bunch of things related to some things related to non-direct response campaigns versus direct response campaigns and a whole bunch of other things. But I thought you could start there on what you meant by that and expand on that a little bit more.
Sure. No, I think the ads that you posted out accomplish what many of them don't, which is driving actual interest in the offer. I think
Mm,
that's often the hardest part as you look at an ad of any sort, whether in B2B SaaS or any industry, quite frankly.
mhm,
It's how do you get someone to listen? That's the hard that's the part where people try to focus on, but to comprehend the message, I feel like that's the bigger ask. Is once you have the attention, that's the first portion. Second portion is how do you get them to listen to what you have to say? And I think the way that you wrote those in those four buckets, I thought it was fantastic. I think the way that it easily displayed kind of the offer in a way that makes you curious. I think that should be
mm,
the goal of any good ad is the curiosity, right? It's like whether you're going to click or bookmark or research afterward, open up a new tab, etc.
mm.
I think that's the hardest part to do, right? You're driving an actual action from words and visuals. So that's where I think that's where I was mentioning like this is a clinic on how to convert that uh, attention that you already have into interest versus the other aspect of the marketing or the advertisement, which is how do you grab their attention? And sometimes marketers, all of us, we can assume that our product is so interesting that it's good enough to grab attention, right? Or
Mm,
we've displayed it in the right context to where like if they're in this space, they're going to have to pay attention to this because my CRM is so much better than HubSpot, Salesforce, et cetera, whatever. But I think
mhm,
that's where people over-index a lot on their ads, or sorry, maybe even under-index on their ads and over-assume that, hey, my product is so great, it's amazing, that if I just
mm,
push this in front of someone's face, they're going to listen to what I have to say.
mm, mhm. And
So that's kind of where my head
so,
went.
yeah, exactly. And so, how do people need to think about, because I think to your point, I mean, there's clearly just saying like, hey, here's what I do, and your point is before they even get to the point of stopping, taking a second, reading your headline, and the for the very few that actually click beyond that and go to your website, what are you saying specifically in terms of how you differentiate that between capturing someone's attention versus creating it or getting that attention in the beginning? Is there a good
Sure.
example of that maybe?
Um, you know, it's hard to point off the top of my head. My mind always goes to, especially in LinkedIn B2B SaaS land, always goes to Todd Clouser. You know, I don't know if you
Mm,
follow him or not, but I
yeah.
feel like he is a wizard when it comes to getting people to stop their scroll, getting people
Mm,
to just at least see what's going on. And granted, it's kind of his brand. So
mhm.
if you're familiar with him, you're a little biased. But even for the unfamiliar, I think he does an exceptional job of just causing you to stop. Or there's that other gentleman who I can't remember his name. But he's always doing something with a knife or cooking or something hilarious while he's
Tim? Yeah.
talking. And, uh, I think that just gives you reason to say, what the heck's going on, right? It disrupts the natural flow that you're kind of just either mindlessly
Mm,
scrolling or purposefully scrolling. It disrupts it. So, to your point, I view advertising really as two primary goals, right? The first and the second being first is grab the attention, get them to stop, and two is get them to listen, willing and enough to the point where they're willing to listen for everything that you have to say,
mhm.
because time is always of the essence. Time, as far as attention span, is always decreasing right now because everything's just being thrown at us. Screens everywhere, every you look, advertisements everywhere, etc. I think that first skill set is just as important as the second skill set, which is
Mm,
probably the harder one. Granted, it's always easy to go grab attention, right? You can get boisterous, you can get crazy, but I
right.
think the interesting way is to do it cohesively, right? To
Right.
where you don't realize it's two separate actions.
Yeah, and you're referring to Tim. Yeah, Tim Davidson's videos are
Yeah,
great. Cutting fruit all day long, pineapples, and all sorts of random stuff. I know he's even done a whole bunch of other videos outside of the fruit stuff too. I think that's interesting. I mean, I think what you're pointing out is that maybe there's a world where, and I think very few brands do this. You're talking about people that are like more those are their personal brands, so they don't represent necessarily. I mean, Tim has his own company where he acts as a consultant doing LinkedIn ads consulting and things like that. And then Todd, not sure where he is now. I think it might be a Clay or something like that. But at any rate, a lot of times the format and the way you present the information is what you're saying then captures that attention because for them, there's the content of what they're saying in the message, the script, right? And that may be the narrative, their POV on how the world's changing around how SDRs reach out to new prospects, or that may be whatever it may be. But the format or the delivery, the way they're doing it is, like Obed, for example, used to play video games all the time and then talk through a script. Todd's done all sorts of random stuff. Tim's cutting fruit. And so people are just doing these things just to make sure that you keep watching. It's kind of like those things you see on Instagram and TikTok that ASMR people do. It's like the marble that rolls down the maze or whatever. And for some reason, you just sit there and keep watching. There's been some interesting things where I've seen some really cool brands actually use. Zapier did this actually. They had an ad where on the top, the guy was just walking through like a regular product demo, but then right below it, there was a stack of pancakes, and there was syrup pouring over those pancakes on the bottom. And I'm sure you've seen that type of thing on Instagram and TikTok. They do it all the time just to grab your attention. So you can kind of have something that's maybe a little bit more like straightforward and plain Jane, mixed with, hey, here's pancakes, something you can relate with, pouring syrup on it. It looks good, looks delicious. I kind of want to see what happens. And it was a little 30-second spot. And I thought it really worked well. I mean, because you just don't see that type of thing.
Totally agree. I think in I view this just again, personal opinion here, as you look at whether it's a person, individual brand, or if it's a company brand. I think it all starts with the appetite or uh, willingness to do what it takes to grab attention. I think there's no
Right.
reason why a big brand or a SaaS brand, even someone in a serious space like me, compliance, right? It's like there's no reason why we can't do what it takes to grab attention as long as it's nothing outside of what you want to be known for. But
Right.
I think being able to, as you look at something that folks can take away from this is getting to that point where your team is comfortable to do what it takes to grab attention. That's hard.
Mhm.
That's difficult. Everyone can talk about the product, but doing what it takes to grab the attention. How do you get the buy-in? How do you get the level of comfort and confidence from your executive team, your CEO, your owner, etc.? How do you get them to give you the thumbs up of like, yes, you can do this?
Right. Right. How do you guys manage
That's
that at
tough.
VComply? Do you guys do anything like that that's a little bit more out there, or have you guys talked about it internally? If you haven't done anything, I haven't seen anything specifically, but maybe it's just because I'm not part of the audience. I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. We actually just launched a new ad, both on LinkedIn, and we're testing out some outdoor actually
Uh-huh.
in a fun way
Oh,
to,
cool.
it starts with a blurry screen, and the screen looks totally messed up. Like there's complete like there's something completely wrong with the screen, and then it kind of comes into focus and hits on the message a little
Hmm.
bit. So, and the reason we've been able to do that is, my founder CEO is very much uh, a big proponent of actual marketing and advertising. Understands sometimes you got to do what it takes versus do what is comfortable,
Mm.
which is where I feel like a lot of brands fall into that on brand, uh, divot that they can't sometimes dig themselves out of because they think on brand means we have to stick to colors, we have to stick to stuff we've always done,
Mm.
versus break the mold, do what it takes to grab attention, then hit them with a message that either relates to how you grab their attention or,
Hmm.
uh, guides them towards that next action, whatever it might be.
You think there's a world though where you can do both? I mean, you can have clear, distinctive assets that relate to your brand, but at the same time deliver that in a format that is interesting.
Absolutely. I think that's the, I think that's a lot of the opportunity we see for B2B advertising
Mm.
is why do they all seem so similar? I think is a good question. A good lateral example of that is the car industry, right? You look at car industries. If you took away the logos, every ad would be the same.
Hmm.
You wouldn't have a clue which company it's for. You have no idea which car it's for, right? It's like there's no actual brand as far as like what are you setting as far
Right.
as an expectation. So I think you absolutely can. I think we should. I think that would make advertising stronger. And I feel like that would take marketing out of the cost center. Why are we spending so much on LinkedIn ads to, oh my gosh, this is great. We should do this more.
Right, right. Yeah, because I know the Ehrenberg Bass Institute's done a lot of great research into this, and when you start looking at how people recall brands, you want them to not work hard to try to recall your brand, and so the use of very consistent, distinctive elements. I mean, I think the easy example to relate people to is McDonald's, right? You've got the golden arches, or Coca-Cola. You've got that distinctive font, also the distinctive bottle shape. And so all these things, like literally without any written words on the ad, you could literally see the shape of the bottle and you'd know Coca-Cola. Or you could even see the font with something completely different written and you'd still say Coca-Cola. And so hard to say that, most B2B SaaS brands are going to fall into, a commodity type, situation like that where like it's Coca-Cola, it's for fucking everyone. But the point is still the same. And so our minds still process information the same way. And so I think what you're saying too is like there's a world where you kind of find scenes, scenarios, or themes, or things that are just done differently, but can still leverage the same on brand elements so that, even if you remove that scene, you could still say, oh shit, I know that's VComply, or I know that's XYZ company. I've seen those elements before. I mean, another example I've mentioned in prior podcasts. I don't know if you know Cognism well. And so
Oh,
Cognism,
yes.
yeah. So Cognism, for whatever reason, I'm sure they're not going for this, but for some reason I think of like Flintstones, the little shapes. They all have all these like colored shapes and stuff like that. It's the oddest thing. I don't know if it's the cereal. There's like a Flintstone cereal, or the the old series back when you were a kid and whatnot.
Oh
But every
yes.
time I see that, I just kind of think of that again. Not related to Cognism at all, but the point is like they could have those distinctive elements, and even if they delivered it in a very creative way, walking around the house or doing laundry or cutting fruit, or it doesn't matter what it is, and had those, like, you could tear that away and I'd be like, I still know that's Cognism at the end of the day. And so I think like that's the balance between these things. But I noticed something interesting about looking at your ads. I was just looking at them right now on the library, but looks like you guys have experimented a ton with all sorts of different types of memes. And I'd be curious to kind of break that out too, because I think memes are certainly an element of getting attention. And I know that we've run them for a variety of different clients. And of course, the click through rates are much higher, engagement's much higher on memes than it is on really any other type of format. But what's been your kind of experience of that? And does that kind of fall into the bucket of what you'd call like, getting people's attention versus, converting attention?
Definitely. So the strategy with where we're at right now, we're very much a startup, right? So our biggest struggle, like many startups, is who the heck are you? Never heard of you before, right?
Yep.
Didn't know you even exist. So the strategy, rather than trying to accomplish two things at once, trying to make them see who we are and then guide them to say, hey, here's our product, that'd be aggressive, right? Especially for a first touch. So
Mhm.
the strategy that we're looking at is through an empathetic way, how can we get folks to perk their ears up and just smile, laugh, right? If we can be synonymous with, oh, they understand me, right? They understand my pains, my frustrations, and I think memes are exceptional at accomplishing that,
Mhm.
emotionally. So that's really been our strategy is how can we, in an empathetic way, but also in a humorous way, get people to stop scrolling
Mm.
and smile, hit the like button, comment, etc. Because I
Mm.
think if we do it enough, right, and this is just a hypothesis that we're trying to prove here, and we've seen some good traction, but the hypothesis was if we can get them to perk their ears up 2 to 3 times and laugh, eventually they're going to say, okay, who is this, VComply? Who
Sure.
are they?
Who are these
Click
guys?
through.
Right. Right. Right.
Exactly. So
Well,
that's kind of
or
been
where they may engage with one of those memes, and then you may have them in another campaign where, okay, cool, they've engaged. There's been some level of interest, quote unquote, and so now we're maybe going to mix that up with a couple of other formats where we actually do just clearly state in more of a rational sense, or even using emotional words within the headline itself, but more specifically state like this is actually what we do, by the way, versus here's just another funny meme. Here's another funny meme. We're just going to do that all day long. It's like, okay, cool. At some point in time, to your point, as you've introduced the idea of like generally maybe who you are, your brand, they've seen that you're kind of more relatable, you've got messages that, really resonate with the strategic narrative you guys are trying to push, then you can kind of come out and send those. Is that kind of how you guys think about it, or do you do it differently?
it's exactly it. It's exactly that flow. It's
Yeah.
perk attention up. Okay, mission accomplished number one. Do it a couple times, build familiarity around, or at least curiosity around who the heck is this. They
Mm.
click through. Then once we get some more engagement, certain points we're trying to shoot for about 3 engagements, put them into
Yeah.
a different audience that starts to hit on our company level value proposition. Still not
Right.
product focused. We're still just more so defining who we are now at that
Right.
point. So we're trying to follow that logical thought process that we as consumers all have and just cater to it. It's
Yeah.
not going to be, it's not going to result in a bunch of, demo requests coming through of like, oh, I've been looking for this for so long, finally, because I saw this meme. No, it's going to be, can we give them a reason to follow us
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, right? Because we validated that they're on the platform. Can we give them a reason to follow us to get more of this stuff to make them smile more often?
Hmm.
And then through the other ads, can we kind of set a fair expectation that, hey, also, we have this stuff. We've got some good subjects,
Mm.
subject matter coming out, content coming out, webinars coming out, right? It just makes those other touch points easier to build
Mm.
awareness rather than going out cold.
Yeah. Do you think there's a line between going too far out there in terms of attention or trying to get something that just doesn't really have a direct dotted line back to the product? Is there a line there? And I guess I'd be curious how you manage that. I mean, when you're creating assets like a meme, or it could be something else, or a scene or a video, how do you still ensure that there's some type of tie back to the product? Or do you not at all worry about that? And you say, you know what, at the end of the day, we're just here to make sure that our audience enjoys the type of content we're putting out there. We're not really that interested in having a tie back to the product at this point in time. It's purely just about having stuff that we know is going to resonate with them, and that's our only goal. How do you think about that?
So it's a great question. I think it depends on the appetite and the risk appetite of the company, right? Like how risky do you want to be?
Mm,
Obviously, how risky do you want to be seen as too? Because you could set that expectation of that's your brand now, right? So
mm,
that's risky. Um, I do think that probably the easiest way to put it, I use this example a lot with my team, is whether it's a best friend, a family member you're super close with, or someone like that. If you were tasked with getting their attention, you'd probably know exactly what to do and how to do it for that specific person, right?
mm.
You're like, oh, I know, easy, got this, right? So and so, they're my best friend. I've known them for 20 years. I know exactly what to say. Your audience should be no different than that same scenario if you truly understand your ideal customer profile.
Right. Keyword.
And I
Right.
think exactly, and I think that's where, when you go into the demographics and the psychographics of your audiences, all of us, we're all victims of it. We still don't go deep enough to really understand that group to where
Mm,
if we tasked our marketing team with, hey, this audience better than anybody, what should we do to get their attention in an authentic way?
mm.
So that way you're not, just standing on the corner with, with your pants off, doing something hilarious just to try and get someone's attention. Probably not the best route, but if you know them, it becomes so much simpler.
I love it. I love it. I totally agree. Anything working really well? I mean, outside of we talked about memes and some of the things you guys are doing, but and then something else you said was in the works, I believe, as well. But anything that you guys have found specifically just has been really effective that you guys continue to repeat and reuse, or vice versa too? Anything we're like, man, this really just kind of fell flat and didn't work, and is probably not something we're going to repeat again.
Yep. So I've got two things that are working well, one thing that didn't. All good learnings. So the memes have been great, as
Mm,
far as getting people to repost, reshare our stuff. Again, we're going for that humor button, so it tends to work pretty easily, especially in our audience. It's not very convoluted with other people doing the same thing. So it
right.
was an easy win. The other one that we actually did this first to justify the memes was, we coined them as bold statements. And the strategy there is, in not a meme format, I don't know what to call it, but it's just, picture with a bunch of words, no pictures, anything like that.
Hmm.
We're like, okay, we're going to say the things that these people can't say, but wish they could.
I
Right.
love that. Yep.
So it's like speak their mind for them so they can say, thank you. You said it for me, so I don't have to get in trouble with my
Yeah,
CEO.
then they can send it to their boss and say, "Hey, check out this thing. Like, tell me we have not been having this issue." And it's like at least that way it gives them some reference point to say, "Hey, I'm not crazy. It's not just me. This other person's saying it too." So,
Exactly. When it's a company, it even adds more validity to it. So
right.
it's we're trying to advocate on behalf of the people we're trying to attract,
Mm.
which is something you probably hear me spout off a lot on my LinkedIn. But the one that we've done that didn't work, and this was an ambitious play on the success of these bold statements that we were pushing out, was we started doing like dear leadership letters, kind of like the Jimmy Fallon type things he would do back in the day, and
Mm.
playing that, and those just didn't work.
Huh. Interesting. Just because they were too formatted, or they just seemed like it was forced, possibly, or what was the reason you think that just didn't really resonate?
It's tough. I mean, the assumption was it was too risky. If I like this, then it really is abrasive to my leadership team if they see this.
Mm.
So we probably went too ambitious on that one.
Mm.
Um, but tough to say.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's important to have these things. I think the immediate question I think that everyone is always trying to figure out is how do we measure some of the success too around some of these things, because there's certainly a conglomerate of people that are obsessed with one thing and one thing only. How many conversions did this ad give or this campaign? How much pipeline? How many opportunities? How much revenue? Show me the money. Otherwise, we're not spending a dollar more on it. And I imagine you have a very different viewpoint on the way this works because you understand that there's different types of campaigns that should be measured in different ways. And so I'd be curious, like for the things that you put in your like attention grabber category, if we will, from a campaign perspective, like what are the things you're looking for? Is it the common things like click-through rate, engagement rate, percent of video viewed? Is it getting traffic to the page, understanding how much time they're spending on the page, or is it anything maybe a little bit more involved?
So it's actually a little bit simpler. I mean, definitely on the first portion, it's, how many engagements are we getting? Can we get more people to repost what we're saying to like prove that we're hitting the right vein? But really, it's a simple metric for us. It's how can we build more followers, right?
Mm,
Is we start to make more noise and we want to lean into the channel. The initial step was, before we've invested in this, is we needed to verify that our audience was there, right? Compliance
mm,
professionals, we're, as marketing, sales, go to market professionals, we're very heavily biased with LinkedIn.
mm,
Just because everyone's on it, everyone's doing the best, creme de la creme marketing, sales tactics, activities, etc. Like we just get to see the best stuff.
mm,
Other audiences, though, we couldn't make the mistake of just assuming they were there. We
mm,
needed to verify that they were there. So once we verified that the audience was there, we're like, okay, this could be a lucrative channel for us in the future. So we should get more awareness for this channel. And by doing that, we're going to do the memes. We're going to do the bold statements. We're going to continue to advocate for these folks. We're going to be empathetic but humorous. Um, those ways to just drive more following. So that way, when we do want to make some noise around a product, we've at least got some more eyeballs that aren't as expensive as a product targeted ad for people who still like, who the heck is this company?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so that's kind of been the metric we've been chasing.
I love it. I love it. You said something else interesting that I think people say is just like a easy thing to post on LinkedIn, which is like be where your audience is, or invest and spend time on the channels where your audience is hanging out, is commonly said. But I think there's so much nuance behind that. And one of the things that at least I have a hardline point of view on is that your audience is in a lot of different channels. And to your point, there are maybe some that are on LinkedIn, but they're not all on LinkedIn. I mean, if you take any audience targeting a cold audience on LinkedIn, generally from a reach perspective, depending on objective, you're in the like 40 to 50% range, even if you're maxing out on budget. And so that just means half of the people, at least in the time window you're looking at from a reach perspective in a 30, 60-day period, are not even getting into the platform. And so you're definitely not hitting everyone you could be. But how do you practically approach that though? I think that's always interesting. How do you practically approach, is my audience here or aren't they? Anything that you would say to people and like the way you guys approach it just with LinkedIn, for example, since we're talking about that?
Sure. No, I think it's building a strong theory and testing it out, right? Like
Mm,
to the to the first portion of an ad, can we capture the attention of our audience, right? Okay, we're going to give ourselves whatever 30 days, right, of a test. We're going to spend 2,500 bucks or it can be 500 bucks, right? Whatever your budget is for this, like figure out what are you willing to spend to know something, right? Because that's
mm-hmm,
at the end of the day, like that's marketing's goal. Most CEOs would disagree with me on this thing, but to me, marketing's goal is to prove a theory that, something works, right?
mm-hmm.
It's our, oh, sweet, we got some balloons on that one.
Oh yeah,
That's a
yeah.
win.
It's part of the
Um,
part of the glam for this podcast. Balloons, peace signs.
love it. We're hitting the right vein. But yeah, so I think I would, go back to fifth grade mentally for just 5 minutes and build your scientific method testing strategy, right? Build your hypothesis. What are you going to do?
Mm,
Who's the control group, etc. And then run your experiment and say, okay, we captured attention KPIs were getting likes and reposts or whatever you want to say, right? You got to
mm,
figure that out of what's the validation.
mm,
But I think it's really that simple. It's coming up with a theory. We think people are here because
mm-hmm,
elaborate. We're going to do XYZ and hoping to achieve, you know, ABC. And you run it. And you set the expectation with your team, whether it's the executive team or your own team, to say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's what we think it's going to result in. And if it doesn't, now we know this is not a good channel for us to do this often, or our strategy was totally wrong. So it could be like one of those two, right? Do we need to revisit the strategy or do we need to revisit the channel? See, are we in the right place? Because it's tough. To your
yeah.
point, they're everywhere. People are on all sorts of platforms
They're on
or
all
none.
channels. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I spend time on a bit on TikTok sometimes, bit on Instagram, mostly LinkedIn, zero on Facebook. Won't catch me on Facebook anymore. Just don't get on it. Never on Quora or Pinterest or Snapchat or any of those. But that's just me, right? And so everyone's different, uses different types of channels. I also haven't picked up a cold call and I don't even know, 7, 8 years or something like that. And so like that just wouldn't be a good channel to reach me. Is cold calling dead? No, of course not. There's plenty of people that still answer the phone. I think that's a shrinking population though. I think a lot of people that are in our generation have really just moved off of, picking up the phone as kind of the first point of contact in the way that they, work. I mean, we're texting, we're on social media, we're in communities, we're in other places like that. And so I think maybe for the, baby boomers still, there's still a lot of people that are actually, working that channel. And so again, just as deciding really, we're going to focus on these one, two, three channels depending on your budget and resources, invest in those and really own them. And then as soon as you feel like you've got the budget and resources to expand into something else, like do it, but don't feel like you've got to be everywhere, even though your audience likely is. You just have to pick a couple and really dig in on them. And so it sounds like LinkedIn is one of the big ones. What are the channels do you guys invest in outside of LinkedIn?
So paid search is big for us just because the need is prevalent enough to get people searching for certain
Yeah.
items, whether it's to learn the newest regulations that are going on, or they're actually looking for software because
Mm,
they inherited something that was archaic and they wanted to modernize it, right? To make their job easier for themselves doing stuff that they're used to doing or filling their own expectation. So I know the other thing that's, it feels like everything's dead. If you go on LinkedIn, it's like every channel's dead. Can't do anything anymore.
I
Might as well
hate
just
it.
stop working.
It's so it's just people looking for attention.
Exactly.
So
Um, but I think for us, like, as people say paid search is dead, don't invest in paid search. It's like we've got, 65% of our pipe coming from paid search. And it's converting decently well. Can we be better? Always, but it's big for us.
yeah,
So again, we're just trying to make sure how do we make our ads stand out, but also show the people who are searching for software why they should look at us versus the other ones in a very clear way, not
right,
just saying we're the best, not just saying, keyword software, right? We're just trying to
right,
build some uniqueness so we're not just throwing spend away at the end of the day. But that's
totally.
a big one for us. Conferences are big too. We're not over indexed on them, but it's definitely a
Mm,
part of the mix. And in person, obviously, super easy to grab attention
mm,
and super easy to kind of make some noise. I have similar to the advertising plays, I have a bunch of sequin jackets that I wear at events. Like they're obnoxious, and I'm 6'6", so it helps
uh-huh.
uh, walking around the floor. But just simple ways like that get people to walk up to you and say, "Oh my gosh, I love your jacket. I have to. What do you do?"
Right, you're truly a walking billboard.
Yeah, it really is. It's hilarious. But yeah, it's really simple for us. Those are the main ones. SEO is a big player, but I think that's also changing quite heavily given the AI
Hmm.
answers that you're getting these days. So we're just trying to figure out, where people are, catering to behavior that already exists, so we don't have to go create new behavior.
Right,
And
right. Let's wrap on two more questions. I'm curious, any brands, SaaS brands stand out to you that are doing a good job grabbing attention? And if so, like what are some examples that you can remember, or just doesn't have to be a specific thing, but anything broadly speaking that you see that they were doing really well in terms of getting the attention of their audience?
sure, I think in a similar light and kind of what inspired some of my strategy, quite frankly, and I'll be totally transparent here, is Chili Piper. I think they did a great job with
Mm,
their social strategy over the past couple of years,
yep.
and in a way that's grabbed my attention. The other one that I think everyone kind of was shocked by, and again, I haven't seen it as much lately, but that lavender company was doing really crazy cool stuff in a way. They had some great players on the team, um,
Mm,
but they were grabbing some attention for me at least. Um, but again, I just haven't been on the platform as much as I'd like to, so I haven't been seeing as much ads or as many ads as I should to
yeah.
keep my chops sharp and stay inspired. But yeah, I think recently Chili Piper I think has been doing a good job with what they were tasked with doing, especially at the level that they're at. Brand awareness to still double down on a strategy there to build more excitement, grab more attention. I just think they've been really doing a really good job.
Yeah, there may have been some other products that were similar before them, but I know that at least they appeared to be one of the kind of first of their kind with that type of problem they were solving. And I think it was a big problem. It was an easy problem to talk about. I mean, chili pepper is incredibly easy to explain. I mean, for most people now, they've gotten into a lot of other areas now, but I think that also helps too with the messaging. And then, of course, LinkedIn was a huge channel for them because they had sales and marketing people that were there and they were active. They wanted to talk. They wanted to say stuff. So I think that, of course, makes it easier. I think some audiences are clearly a little bit harder. I mean, your devs and data scientists, your more technical audiences seem to always be a little more difficult. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but yeah, Chili Barber is great. It's a great example. Well, anything before we jump that we maybe didn't cover that you think would be good to mention around just ways to create interest with ads or anything related, even outside of advertising, could be something organic related, anything like that that maybe we didn't cover?
Yeah, I mean, not that we didn't cover, but I'll just kind of offer a not a closing statement, but just something I say often to my team, just to kind of keep them aware and reminded,
Yeah.
is that 100% of B2B customers and prospects are B2C customers and prospects, right?
Mm.
So for us to assume that the advertising game changes all of a sudden just because we put in our B2B hats would be a mistake, right? I think I
Yep.
would challenge folks in the B2B space to go get inspired by B2C ads. Go look at the latest and greatest out in e-commerce. Look for it because I would say they are exceptional at grabbing
Mm.
attention and really, really great at building narrative.
Mm.
So, not saying go copy ads, but I think as you look at inspiration for grabbing attention, inspiration for building that value proposition, similar to how you did in those 4 buckets, which I still think is great. Everyone should go check that out.
Mm.
Um, just go get inspired and put your analytical glasses on and see what did they do for the first 3 seconds versus what did they do for the last 7 seconds or 10 seconds, and start to study it, because I think it becomes a lot simpler when you look at building your ads, whether it's static or uh, a movement from a GIF or a video, to just take a pause, simplify it, and maybe break the mold.
I like it, man. Those are good words. I think it's a good ending point. Well, cool. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, learn more, or just chat in general? LinkedIn? Anywhere else?
LinkedIn is my social poison for me. Everything else
Hmm.
I'm not on currently. So yeah, LinkedIn. Happy to chat with anybody. Feel free to reach out. Happy to help if you want some ideas. Again, I'm easy.
Social poison. I like it. I like it. All right, big guy. Well, hey, man, it was great doing this, and we'll have to have you on again here soon.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. It's great to hang.
All right, man. Cheers.